So I made a video responding to StyxHexenHammer666 on the topic of the Iran deal. He responded, and I'm going to be responding once again.
And why they're laughable. Point number one is he's talking about this nuclear deal simply being necessary. Like it'll keep the world safer. The world's better off without Iran having nukes. Okay, maybe so, but the thing is, the Iran deal will not actually stop nuclear development. And we can preface this on saying, look, there was a similar style of function to the deal struck between Bill Clinton, long ago, of course, when he was the president in the 1990s, which I know you don't remember. He struck a deal with the DPRK. They have nuclear weapons. But they had a deal. Inspectors were allowed to go in and do inspections. They were only allowed to enrich it to a certain level. There was guaranteed, look, they signed a paper. And then they fucking ignored it. This one is even weaker than the North Korea deal, though. Thank goodness.
So once again, it looks like we're at an issue of lies by omission and not mentioning really what happened. So what he's talking about here is the deal that was signed by Bill Clinton with the U.S. and North Korea to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon. It was somewhat similar to what we have as the Iran deal, except it was only a few pages long. And it was similar in that it was something that was not ratified by the Senate as a treaty. And it also had some countries, I think Japan and another country, that had essentially been doing what France and the other countries have been doing with the Iran deal. Now, here's what happened. So this article from the Washington Post says, so how did North Korea get its hands on the nuclear material? George W. Bush became president in 2001 and was highly skeptical of Clinton's deal with North Korea. Secretary of State Colin Powell was even slapped down when he suggested the administration would follow the path set by the Clinton administration. The new administration terminated missile talks with Pyongyang and spent months trying to develop its own policy. Then intelligence agencies determined that North Korea was cheating on the agreement by trying to develop nuclear material through another method, highly enriched uranium. The Bush administration sent an envoy who confronted North Korea, and the regime was said to have belligerently confirmed it in 2002, just as the Bush administration was mostly focused on the pending invasion of Iraq. In response, the Bush administration terminated the supply of fuel oil that was essential to the agreement, and then North Korea quickly kicked out the UN inspectors, restarted the nuclear plant, and began developing its nuclear weapons, using the material and radioactive fuel rods that previously had been under close watch of the IAEA. Japan and South Korea, the key partners in the accord, were not happy with the decision to terminate the agreed framework, but there was little they could do about it. It says, within 2 years, U.S. intelligence analysts concluded North Korea was using the plutonium to create nuclear weapons. It also says, after North Korea conducted its first nuclear test in 2006, the Bush administration tried desperately to negotiate a new accord with Pyongyang, including offering significant new concessions, but those efforts ultimately failed. So what does this mean? This means that basically what happened is the deal was working fine under Bill Clinton, and it was working fine. The IAEA was inspecting and everything. But then the W. Bush administration comes in. Even Colin Powell, who now talks about how it was crazy that what he did and it was stupid, he was he was like, we need to stay with this deal. And as you guys know, the W. Bush administration massively warmongering, constant fabrication of evidence. There's no debate about that anymore, about WMDs in Iraq. And he did the exact same thing with North Korea. And I'm not trying to insinuate because he obviously doesn't support George W. Bush. However, the lie by omission is that this deal didn't work. The deal didn't work because it was abandoned. The deal was abolished. It was working while it was in place. Then you get a warmongering, lying administration claiming that everybody and their fucking grandma is making WMDs, and then the deal is gone. And then, oh man, now once they get nuclear weapons, the W. Bush administration comes to the table and goes, whoa, let's give you some concessions, man, please don't do this. You just destroyed the deal that would prevent them from doing that, and if we look into the future, we're going to be in that same situation. And Japan and South Korea, the bordering country of North Korea, was like, what the fuck, why did you do that? Why did you do that? This was completely falsified information, just like they did in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. Now, this is written by Glenn Kessler back in 2007, in which he says, the Bush administration is backing away from its long-held assertions that North Korea has an active clandestine program to enrich uranium, leading some experts to believe that the original U.S. intelligence that started the crisis over Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions may have been flawed. So, basically what happened is, they even had to back away from it eventually. It was complete BS. And so what they did is they break the deal. North Korea goes, okay, you're going to break the deal. Fuck the IAEA inspectors. Get out of here. They kick them out. And the things that the IAEA was inspecting, they use that to be able to enrich uranium and get nuclear weapons, start, going towards nuclear weapons. And so had that deal been in place, we could very much at least be in a better position now than we were previously. So this is just ridiculous, and that's such a lie by omission. The idea that the deal did not work because of the deal. Oh, inspectors were able to go in, but it didn't work. It didn't work because it didn't continue. The bill was the agreement was destroyed by the W. Bush administration. And again, I'm not smearing you and saying that you support W. Bush, but you made a lie by omission and not stating that, holy shit, W. Bush destroyed this agreement, and then after it gets destroyed, the exact thing that the IAEA was investigating now is being used and was being used to be able to enrich uranium to get nuclear weapons. So this is utterly ridiculous, and this is why research is so important.
I don't actually believe that Iran is attempting to obtain nuclear weapons. I think that they're using it for energy development. I think they're doing what the North Koreans didn't do. They feel safe enough under Russia's sphere so that they're not too worried about the U.S. unilaterally invading them like North Korea might with their weaker relationship with China.
So here's my main problem with this argument is that the relations between Iran and Israel have really been heating up as of recently. And not too long ago, they literally almost got into a head-on-head conflict within Syria. And if you guys know anything, you know that the U.S. has massive tetherings and followings of Israel. And I'm not trying to say that, Styx is somehow being a, whether a Netanyahu apologist or whatever. What I'm saying is that the analysis is incorrect. Because if you look at anything, we are going to defend Israel no matter what they do. We're going to defend Israel. But this idea is going to become a nuclear conflict. At the worst case scenario, that could be a possibility. But with this conflict in Syria specifically, if we break this Iran deal, we lose our tethering to not going to attack Iran or aiding Israel in some way, then what we are going to lead up to is due to our constant followings of Israel, we are going to either side with them or we're going to do some actions, maybe, I don't know what we would do specifically, but we would help Israel in their fight against Israel and Iran. Why do you think Netanyahu is trying to say Iran lied and all this stuff, and you go on to talk about this in your video? And again, I'm not saying you're a Netanyahu supporter at all, but what I'm saying is your analysis is incorrect, and you're lacking the thought of we are going to do what Israel wants us to do, and there's a reason why Netanyahu is trying to do this, and that's why I think that your analysis of why you don't care about the Iran deal is, it's bad. It's bad. It's not good. We want to prevent that from happening, and honestly, this tethering that we have to Iran is far better because then it will prevent any sort of war happening whatsoever. And you should be in agreement with that if you're not a warmonger, and you're not. So I don't understand where the disconnect is.
That's why I'm not worried. You're attempting to insinuate in your video that I'm simply apologizing for Trump. It's not an apology. I really honestly don't think that Iran is attempting to gain nuclear weapons. And it's not warmongering when I point out that if they do, they'll be destroyed. I'm just making a statement of fact. And you're invoking mutually assured destruction, by the way, without even understanding what it means. Do you even understand the difference between a crude prototype style, maybe atomic weapon that Iran could develop, any time now, and the kind of thermonuclear weapons Israel provably has? Pentagon report from the mid-1980s said they have a large stockpile of multi-stage nuclear weapons. We're not talking about grandma's atomic bomb. We're not talking about the sort of weapon that kills a city. We're talking about the sort of thing that renders most of an entire metropolitan district utterly uninhabitable and then sends a wafting cloud of radiation 100 miles downwind. There's a big difference between the two. Israel has enough of such weapons, according to the Pentagon, to wipe out basically every significant city in the entire region. Trust me, you have to assume that the Iranians are insane if you think that they would assume it was a good idea to attempt to outmaneuver Israel when it comes to nuclear weapons. Again, not saying this as a warmonger, saying this as someone who's simply being pragmatic. That would make them an insane actor, like the claim that's commonly made about Donald Trump, oddly enough.
I disagree with the idea that if Iran attempted to get a nuclear weapon, Israel is going to attempt to essentially wipe them off the map. I think that that idea is crazy in and of itself. The idea that they're just going to nuke the fuck out of them for trying to get a nuke, I think is ridiculous, and I don't understand where that comes from. How could they possibly, think of actually doing that? You're talking about nuking them. When I'm talking about mutually assured destruction, once they get a nuke, Israel's going to have to take a lot of damage from even however many fucking nukes they have. If it's even one, they're going to take a lot of damage in Israel from one fucking nuke, even if they have that. But again, the idea that them trying to get a nuke or getting a nuke will lead to them getting nuked is ridiculous. In fact, I would argue that them getting to a nuke would be the best way to prevent war with Israel, because then they would have a actual mutually assured destruction. But this is not that. I don't agree with you there.
I do not consider them insane. And if they are, then they're probably insane enough to ignore the nuclear deal. What exactly in the nuclear deal keeps them from enriching something to a greater degree and then just moving it? Anything? Anybody want to raise their hand and tell me exactly what guarantee we have of that?
The International Atomic Energy Agency, known as the IAEA, will be inspecting all nuclear facilities within Iran. In fact, here's a comment from the Secretary of Defense of the United States, who Donald Trump himself appointed. This is what he said about the Iran deal. He says, quote, "I will say it is written almost with an assumption that Iran would try to cheat. So the verification, what is in there, is actually pretty robust as far as our intrusive ability to get in. Whether that is sufficient, I think, is a valid question." So essentially what he's saying there is it's extremely intrusive, and that is what's going to stop it. It was written with the presumption that they are going to cheat. That is the whole point of the deal.
Then you talk about, well, the U.S. was just giving them back their own money. It's not, Obama didn't send them crates of money that belonged to the taxpayers. He sent them their own money. Yeah, okay, so somehow we had a bunch of Iranian cash laying around. Okay. It's not 100% how an embargo works, but okay, whatever. That's practically a non-issue.
This is just completely false. PolitiFact debunked this when Donald Trump made the quote saying, "We give them $150 billion, we get nothing." PolitiFact says, Trump's statement makes it sound like we're cutting Iran a $150 billion check. In reality, the money is already Iran's to begin with, just frozen under the many economic sanctions levied against the country. Restrictions on Iranian assets, such as the $1.9 billion the national Iranian oil company was restricted from collecting from Shell for delivering crude supplies, began to thaw this year. Per the Iran deal, nuclear inspectors verified in January that Tehran was doing enough to curb its nuclear program, prompting the United States and other countries to lift the sanctions. Just how much money was being held up? Experts say $150 billion is the high end of estimates, or as Malloy put it, what it could possibly be in the broadest imagination. Most peg the total value of Iranian assets at around $100 billion, but Iran probably still won't be able to access all of it. It says the deal only releases assets frozen because of Iran's nuclear program. Assets blocked because of other sanctions on terrorism, human rights, and missile technology won't change as a result of the agreement. So it says the actual amount available to Iran is about $60 billion, estimates Garbus Iranian, chief economist at the Institute of International Finance. U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew hinted at $56 billion, while Iranian officials say $35 billion, according to Richard Nephew, an expert on economic sanctions at Columbia University Center on Global Policy. So this is literally, just as I said, it's money, it's frozen assets. So they do an action, and then we freeze the money that they're supposed to receive, and that's what's happened. Not only that, but we've placed many different sanctions on them. Like it just stated, the sanctions that were placed due to other reasons, whether it be terrorism, human rights, etc., etc., those aren't even being thawed. They're not being unfrozen. We're unfreezing the assets. We're not giving them crates of money. We're giving them back the money that they had earned, but we have frozen from them. We are not giving back to them, just like it stated about the Shell example. So this is just false. Like, I don't understand that. This is a war on facts. This is not true. I don't understand how you could be on such a war on facts. How many things do I have to cite that are factually correct that you are stating that is factually incorrect?
Your claims, as well. It seems like you're attempting to insinuate that I was exonerating Netanyahu or didn't have a problem with him, didn't take his threats seriously. I think Netanyahu warmongers for political reasons. I think primarily he'll conduct a few strikes. Like, I think it was 2006 he destroyed a reactor in Syria or something. He does this to get reelected. He's a dictator, basically. He gets people paranoid and afraid. Oh, the Iranians are going to get you. Assad is going to get you. There's someone else in the region. The Pakistanis are coming. The Russians are coming. It doesn't really matter who it is. He drums up the threat of some form. It's like the Palestinians are going to get you. And then he uses that to get reelected. There's a rhyme and reason to why he does this, but that doesn't mean he's actually going to haul off.
So I wasn't even actually saying that he was sort of underscoring what Netanyahu was for, and I think what he just said is completely correct. What I was saying is you're lacking the analysis and reasoning that the U.S. effectively is tethered to Israel, and we often and always, literally always cater to what they need, and we do whatever the fuck they want us to do. Trump is doing the bidding of Benjamin Netanyahu right now, literally right now.
Attack, Iran preemptively, and by the way, if the Israelis do, then Russia might get involved. They'll get their shit kicked in too, and I wouldn't think that we should defend them. No, I wouldn't want to get involved in such a conflict. I think there's a difference between an ally that acts in a sane, benevolent manner and one that, annihilates another country, primarily killing civilians. So far, though, that hasn't happened. I am optimistic that there won't be war with Iran, primarily because of Russian involvement and because I consider the Iranian government fundamentally sane.
Iran and Israel have gotten scary close to fighting in Syria already. They barely backed off each other. You just admitted how much of a warmonger Netanyahu is, and then you also explained how Russia would get in, but then you don't add on that we are effectively tethered to Israel, and we would almost be, especially with the current administration, an obligation to defend them, which would lead to a World War III scenario with Russia entering. So if you are somebody who is against that, not a warmonger, you would say that we need this deal. Not that I don't care about this deal. You'd say we need this deal because clearly with all these forces coming together, it's going to be a World War III-like scenario.
You have to believe they're insane to think it's a good idea to develop atomic weapons. It wouldn't give them an advantage over Israel. It would take them 50 years to develop a stockpile the kind of which Israel already has. And the Israelis have already said, hey, Samson option. If it looks like we're going to get hit by anything, we're just going to wipe you off the face of the earth. It's a terrible thing to have to say. I don't agree with it. I think it's butcherous and insane. It would be a better world if people weren't like that. But
Iran doesn't have to get its hands on the same amount as Israel has. Israel, all they need for a certain really mutually assured destruction for Israel to take a massive hit is really just some, however many, whatever, small, tiny amount of nukes to really be able to have mutually assured destruction, especially because it's Israel. But I disagree with your analysis that if Iran attempted to get a nuclear weapon, they're going to get nuked in the process by Israel. Are you mad?